When you stop having sex, the energy does not disappear, it transforms, and what it becomes can either enslave you in shadows or elevate you into mastery. When you stop having sex, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Most people believe abstinence is about loss of pleasure, of intimacy, of vitality. But in truth, the energy that is withheld does not vanish. Energy cannot be destroyed. It only changes form. And sexual energy, or libido as I have called it, is not merely physical, it is the life force that animates the psyche, the current that drives creativity, imagination, and even spiritual awakening. When this energy is not discharged through instinct alone, it begins to rise, to seek higher channels of expression. This is why abstinence, when practiced consciously, can become a crucible of transformation. The very tension of withheld desire becomes the fire that fuels sublimation, the redirection of raw instinct into art, vision, discipline, or devotion. Yet abstinence is also dangerous when misunderstood. If the energy is repressed in shame or fear, it does not become light but shadow. It emerges as compulsion, obsession, or frustration. The difference lies in awareness. To stop having sex is not the end of desire, it is the beginning of dialogue with it. And that dialogue can either enslave, or it can liberate. When people hear the word libido, they think only of sex. They imagine it as a reservoir of physical desire, a force that seeks satisfaction in intimacy and nothing more. But this is a misunderstanding, one that reduces the grandeur of human energy to a single expression. In my work, I have shown that libido is far more than sexual impulse, is the life energy of the psyche itself, the stream of vitality that animates every aspect of our existence. It is the current that flows through body, mind, imagination, and spirit, shaping everything we create, desire, and become. Sexuality is only one channel through which libido manifests. It is intense, immediate, and powerful, but it is not the whole. Just as a river divides into many branches, libido flows into creativity, into thought, into dreams, into the longing for love, and even for God. To see libido only as sexual energy is to mistake the part for the whole, to close our eyes to the deeper mystery. So what really happens when you stop having sex? The energy does not vanish. Nature does not allow energy to disappear. Instead, it remains within you, pressing for expression in other forms. When abstinence is practiced consciously, the currents of libido that once flowed outward begin to flow inward and upward. The instinct that sought union with another now seeks union with something greater, whether that is the creation of beauty, the pursuit of knowledge, or the experience of inner wholeness. Imagine libido as fire. Left to its instinctual course, the fire burns quickly, giving warmth and pleasure, but then it is gone. When you contain the fire, when you do not immediately let it escape you, begin to feel its intensity build. That fire can then be directed, harnessed, used to forge something new. Abstinence, in this sense, is not the extinction of fire, but its containment, its preservation, and its redirection. But let us be clear, the containment of libido is not without challenge. When you withhold sexual expression, the energy may rise as restlessness, frustration, or even anxiety. These are signs not of failure, but of energy searching for new outlets. If one lacks awareness, this energy can turn destructive, feeding compulsions, irritability, or intrusive fantasies. This is why I insist, abstinence without consciousness becomes repression, and repression strengthens the shadow. The energy does not serve you, it works against you. But abstinence with awareness is another matter. It is a crucible, a vessel in which energy is transformed rather than buried. Across cultures and traditions, symbols point to this truth. In Eastern philosophy, the serpent coiled at the base of the spine represents the dormant energy that, when awakened, rises into higher consciousness. This is libido. In alchemy, the fire that refines base metals into gold is another image of libido. In mythology, the hero who resists temptation and channels his strength into the quest for higher purpose embodies this transformation. These symbols show us that, when libido is contained, it seeks not destruction, but elevation. You can see it in life itself. The artist who turns longing into poetry has sublimated libido. The inventor who pours his passion into discovery has sublimated libido. The seeker who transforms desire into devotion has sublimated libido. None of these are denials of instinct. They are refinements of it. Sexual abstinence, then, becomes a way of gathering energy that might otherwise be dissipated and allowing it to fuel creation. Insight and growth. Dreams often reveal this shift. At first, one who abstains may dream vividly of sexual encounters, as the unconscious insists that the energy must be recognized. But over time, the imagery begins to change. Fire becomes light. Water rises instead of flowing downward. Flights, transformations, and symbols of creation appear. The unconscious shows that libido is taking new forms, seeking expression beyond the purely instinctual. These dream images are not to be dismissed. They are guides, marking the inner journey of energy as it awakens hidden currents of the psyche. The psychological process of individuation, the becoming of the self, depends on libido. Every step of development requires energy. To leave behind the comforts of childhood, to form identity, to face shadow, to discover vocation, to awaken spiritually. Without libido, there is no growth, no creativity, no transformation. With it, life unfolds into deeper meaning. This is why abstinence, when consciously lived, is not deprivation but empowerment. It allows you to work with the very energy of individuation, the current that propels you toward wholeness. This does not mean that sexuality is wrong or lesser. Sexual expression is one of the richest experiences of human life, filled with intimacy, joy, and meaning. But when abstinence is chosen, whether temporarily or as a discipline, it becomes an opportunity to explore libido in its broader, more mysterious dimensions. It asks, what will you do with this energy, now that you have contained it? Will you waste it in repression, or will you allow it to rise into vision, art, or awakening? When you stop having sex, the currents of libido begin to flow differently. You may discover new intensity in your thoughts, in your work, in your creativity. You may feel restlessness that, if guided, becomes drive and determination. You may uncover passions you had forgotten, or spiritual depths you had never touched. This is not the disappearance of desire, it is its metamorphosis. Sexual abstinence awakens hidden currents, revealing the vastness of libido as life force. So what really happens when you stop having sex? You come face to face with the truth of your own energy. You discover that libido is not only about the body, but about the soul. You realize that abstinence, far from being an end, can be the beginning of a profound journey, the awakening of power, creativity, and transformation that has always lived within you. When you withhold sexual expression, the question naturally arises, what will you do with the energy that remains? This is where the concept of sublimation enters, one of the most important and misunderstood processes in psychology. Freud first used the term to describe how instinctual drives, especially sexual ones, can be channeled into socially acceptable or creative activities. I agreed with his insight, but expanded it further. For me, sublimation is not simply about redirecting desire into what society approves. It is about transformation, about taking the raw energy of instinct and refining it into higher forms of life, thought, and spirit. To sublimate is not to repress. Repression pushes energy into the unconscious, where it festers, twists, and emerges as symptom or shadow. Sublimation, by contrast, acknowledges the force of desire, respects its reality, and then seeks to give it new shape. It is the difference between damming a river until it floods and poisoning the land, versus guiding that river through canals where it irrigates fields and brings forth life. In abstinence, sublimation is the essential work that turns tension into creativity, restlessness into purpose, and longing into vision. You can see sublimation at work in the history of culture. Consider the cathedral builders of medieval Europe. Their age was no less driven by desire than ours, but they channeled that energy into the soaring spires, the intricate stonework, the music of choirs that lifted the soul. These creations were not made by people who denied life, but by people who transmuted it. The same energy that could have been lost in fleeting indulgence became a monument to spirit. Sublimation took instinct and made it into art. The artist, the poet, the musician, all are masters of sublimation. Think of Michelangelo carving David out of stone. Do you not feel the pulse of life, the sensuality of form, the intensity of longing, even though the marble remains silent? This is libido sublimated, sexual energy transformed into vision and beauty. Or think of Beethoven, deaf, yet still filled with passion, pouring his energy into symphonies that move us centuries later. Such works are proof that sublimation is not denial but creation, the birth of higher realities out of raw instinct. But sublimation is not limited to art. It happens in science, in philosophy, in spirituality. The researcher who loses himself in the pursuit of knowledge, the mystic who transforms longing into prayer, the reformer who channels passion into justice. Each of these is an act of sublimation. Abstinence becomes the ground on which this process unfolds. For the energy that is not spent must go somewhere. The question is whether it will spiral into repression or rise into creativity. The process of sublimation requires awareness. It is not automatic. To stop having sex without awareness can leave a person restless, irritable, even tormented. The energy presses for release but finds no path. Awareness provides that path. It means recognizing the presence of energy, respecting its strength, and asking, how can this force serve a higher purpose? What creation, what discipline, what devotion can become the channel for this power? In this way, abstinence becomes not an empty void, but a rich reservoir, ready to irrigate the fields of your inner life. There is also a spiritual dimension. Many traditions have seen chastity or abstinence not as suppression but as a way of awakening inner fire. In yogic philosophy, the practice of brahmacharya channels sexual energy into spiritual awakening. In Christian monasticism, celibacy is not meant to deny love, but to redirect it toward God. In alchemy, the sexual union of opposites becomes a symbol of inner union, the creation of the philosopher's stone. These are all languages of sublimation, pointing to the truth that when libido is withheld in one form, it becomes available for another often higher, more expansive, more transformative. Yet sublimation is not always dramatic. It is also present in daily life. The person who abstains may find sudden bursts of creativity, new ideas, new projects, new energy for pursuits once neglected. They may discover discipline in work, clarity in thought, or renewed passion in relationships that transcend the purely physical. Sublimation happens when energy finds expression in the very fabric of living. When you cook with intensity, write with depth, speak with conviction, or love with devotion that is not limited to the body. Dreams again serve as witnesses. A person practicing abstinence may first dream of raw, uncontained desire, but with sublimation, the imagery shifts. Sexual symbols are replaced with images of creation, of building, of painting, of fire becoming light, of water rising as steam. These dreams reveal that the unconscious itself is sublimating, guiding libido into forms that enrich rather than consume. The psyche participates in this work, showing through symbols what the conscious mind is striving to achieve. But sublimation is not without risk. It demands honesty. If one pretends to sublimate while secretly repressing, the shadow grows. The person may become rigid, judgmental, or secretly tormented. True sublimation requires openness to instinct, an acknowledgement that the fire is real. Only by respecting its power can you guide it. To deny it is to be deceived. To repress it is to be destroyed. But to sublimate it is to be transformed. Abstinence, then, becomes the fertile ground where sublimation can flourish. The energy that once flowed outward through instinct is now available for higher channels. Whether you direct it into art, into knowledge, into service, or into spirit, the essential truth remains. You are not losing energy by abstaining. You are gathering it, concentrating it, refining it. Sublimation ensures that the energy does not stagnate, but becomes the very fuel of your growth. So what happens when you stop having sex? You discover the hidden potential of sublimation. You begin to see that desire is not merely a call to physical union, but a deeper summons to create, to imagine, to awaken. The same energy that stirs the body is also the energy that builds civilizations, writes poetry, composes symphonies, and prays to the divine. Abstinence opens the door, and sublimation leads you through it. In this way, the raw power of libido becomes not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be transformed. When a person chooses abstinence, an immense reservoir of energy is withheld. This energy can be a force for transformation, as I have said. But it can also turn against you if it is not approached with honesty and awareness. The danger lies in repression. To repress is to push desire into the unconscious, to pretend it does not exist, to bury it under shame or fear. But whatever is repressed does not die. It becomes shadow. The shadow, in my psychology, is the part of the personality that contains everything we deny, reject, or refuse to face. It is the hidden twin of the conscious self, where the conscious mind says, I am pure, disciplined, free from desire. The shadow whispers, you are still filled with longing, rage, jealousy, hunger. To repress sexual energy in abstinence without acknowledging its reality is to feed the shadow. Instead of transformation, there is distortion. The withheld energy becomes obsession, compulsion, or hidden vice. You can see this clearly in history. Those who proclaimed the loudest purity were often those most tormented by secret desires. Their shadow, fattened by repression, eventually broke through in destructive ways. This is not because abstinence is wrong, but because abstinence without shadow work is incomplete. To deny the existence of instinct is to be enslaved by it in disguise. So what really happens when you stop having sex? One of two things. Either you confront your shadow honestly, or your shadow will confront you. If you repress, the energy moves underground. It surfaces in irritability, in fantasies that haunt you, in compulsions that shame you. But if you bring it into awareness, if you name it, face it, and integrate it, the same energy becomes strength. This is the crucial difference between repression and confrontation. Shadow work is the process by which the hidden becomes conscious. It means saying, yes, I have desire. Yes, I feel the pull of instinct. Yes, within me lives the animal, the primitive, the untamed. To acknowledge this is not to lose control, it is to gain it. For only when you admit what is there can you choose what to do with it. Abstinence becomes dangerous only when it becomes denial. But when it becomes dialogue with the shadow, it becomes the path of mastery. The unconscious speaks through dreams. When abstinence begins, many people dream of sexual encounters, of forbidden unions, of fantasies they might never pursue in waking life. These are not signs of weakness. They are messages from the unconscious, saying, here is the energy you must face. To repress these dreams, to wake in shame, is to strengthen the shadow. But to reflect on them, to ask what they symbolize, is to begin integration. Perhaps the dream is not about literal sex, but about union of opposites. Union of masculine and feminine, union of conscious and unconscious. Sexual imagery in dreams often points beyond itself, to the deeper mysteries of wholeness. In myth, the shadow is always represented as the monster. The hero must face the dragon, the beast, the serpent in the cave. These figures are not evil in themselves. They are symbols of the raw, instinctual power we fear. The hero who runs from the monster is devoured. The hero who fights blindly is destroyed. But the hero who faces the monster, who enters its lair, who wrestles with it until he understands its nature, that hero is transformed. He gains strength, treasure, wisdom. The shadow, once confronted, becomes an ally. Abstinence brings this myth to life. The instinct that once found its outlet in sex now rises as the monster in the cave. If you repress it, you will fear it. If you indulge it secretly, it will consume you. But if you face it, if you say, yes, you are part of me, then the monster becomes your teacher. The shadow is no longer an enemy, but a source of power. Integration means you do not repress instinct, nor do you surrender to it. You give it a place within the whole of your being. This process requires courage. To look into the shadow is to look into the parts of yourself you would rather not see. It is to admit that purity is never complete, that even in discipline you remain human, with desires, flaws, contradictions. But this honesty is what frees you. For the man or woman who denies desire is controlled by it in secret, while the one who admits it gains the possibility of choice. Conscious abstinence is not about killing instinct, but about taming it, guiding it, allowing it to serve a higher purpose. You can see the fruits of shadow integration in those who practice abstinence with awareness. They are not rigid, nor judgmental, nor repressed. They are vital, creative, and often deeply compassionate. For having faced their own shadow, they understand the struggles of others. They radiate a quiet strength, not because they have destroyed desire, but because they have befriended it. The energy once feared has become a foundation of power. But the opposite is also true. You can see the consequences of repression in those who deny desire without integrating it. They become brittle, angry, obsessed with purity in others, or prone to sudden lapses into secret indulgence. Their abstinence is not strength but a mask, hiding a shadow that grows darker each day. This is why shadow work is essential. Abstinence without integration is repression, and repression leads not to mastery but to breakdown. So, when you stop having sex, you do not become free of desire. You meet it in its truest form. You meet your shadow. You face the parts of yourself that you have ignored, feared, or condemned. This confrontation is not easy, but it is necessary. For only by integrating the shadow can you transform withheld desire into creative force, into vision, into wholeness. The shadow, once accepted, ceases to be a prison. It becomes a source of wisdom, a reminder that the path to mastery is not the path of denial, but of integration. The energy you hold in abstinence will bring you face to face with the hidden parts of your psyche. It will challenge you, tempt you, even frighten you. But if you have the courage to confront it, to see yourself honestly, then you will discover that, within the shadow lies treasure. The instinct you feared becomes the energy that empowers. The desire you denied becomes the longing that awakens you to deeper love, deeper creativity, deeper wholeness. This is the paradox of abstinence. What you withhold outwardly returns to you inwardly, not as loss, but as encounter. And in that encounter, you either fall into repression, or you rise into integration. The choice is yours. To speak of libido as life energy, of sublimation as transformation, and of the shadow as confrontation is to remain in the realm of ideas. But ideas must find their place in lived reality. Abstinence, if it is to become more than theory, must show its fruits in the daily life of the one who practices it. This is where we turn to the practical dimension, the ways in which withheld sexual energy can become a path to inner mastery. The first step is awareness. Without awareness, abstinence quickly becomes repression, and repression strengthens the shadow. Awareness means observing yourself honestly, without judgment or denial. It means noticing the currents of desire as they arise, acknowledging their power, and choosing consciously how to respond. The one who says, "I have no desire," deceives himself and is at its mercy. The one who says, "I feel desire, but I choose to hold it, to guide it," begins the path of mastery. Awareness is not about suppression. It is about presence. It is the capacity to see energy for what it is and to recognize its potential. The second step is containment. Energy that is always discharged remains shallow. Energy that is hoarded without purpose becomes stagnant. But energy that is contained, held consciously, without fear, grows in intensity. Abstinence is the practice of containment. By not immediately yielding to instinct, you allow libido to accumulate within the psyche. At first, this may feel like restlessness, like tension, even like discomfort, but it is the necessary pressure that creates transformation. Just as coal under pressure becomes diamond, contained desire becomes the fuel for inner strength. The third step is direction. Contained energy without a channel becomes destructive. It erupts as compulsion, fantasy, or obsession. But when you give energy a path, it becomes creativity, discipline, vision. Direction means choosing consciously how to use the fire you have preserved. For some, it becomes art, painting, writing, music. For others, it becomes devotion, prayer, meditation, service. For still others, it becomes mastery in work, study, or leadership. What matters is that you provide libido with a channel worthy of its power. The energy will always seek expression. To direct it consciously is to guide it toward growth rather than chaos. The fourth step is integration. Mastery does not mean cutting off instinct or pretending it no longer exists. It means giving it a place within the whole of your being. Integration acknowledges that sexuality is one expression of libido, but not the only one. It honors the instinct without being enslaved by it. It allows you to live with vitality while channeling your energy into higher purposes. In this way, abstinence becomes not a rejection of sexuality, but a reordering of it, placing it within a larger vision of life. These four steps: containment, direction, integration form the practical path of transformation. They ensure that abstinence does not become repression, but instead becomes mastery. To understand this practically, let us look at how abstinence changes daily life. One who practices with awareness often reports increased clarity of thought. The mind, once consumed by fantasies or preoccupations, becomes sharper, more focused. Energy no longer lost in instinct becomes available for study, work, or reflection. Dreams become more vivid, often filled with symbols of transformation, fire, flight, creation. The unconscious is speaking, showing that energy is rising and taking new forms. Emotionally, abstinence practiced with consciousness often leads to increased vitality. The same person who once felt drained by indulgence may feel a new intensity of energy, a drive that propels them forward. But there can also be turbulence, mood swings, restlessness, even irritability may appear. These are signs that energy is pressing for release. They are not failures. but invitations to redirect energy consciously. Physical practices, exercise, breathwork, meditation can help channel the surplus, ensuring it does not stagnate. Creatively, abstinence can be a wellspring. Writers speak of sudden floods of inspiration, artists of visions that press to be expressed, entrepreneurs of bold new ideas. This is libido finding new channels. The tension of withheld desire becomes the spark that ignites imagination. The very fire that once sought only union with another becomes the force that creates works of art, visions of the future, or acts of service that touch others deeply. Spiritually, abstinence opens profound doors. Many traditions speak of sexual energy as sacred, as the root of awakening. When contained and sublimated, it rises as spiritual fire, opening the psyche to deeper states of consciousness. The longing once directed toward the body of another becomes longing for union with the self, with God, with the infinite. This is why monks, yogis, and mystics so often practiced abstinence, not to deny life, but to touch its deeper source. For them, sexual energy was not wasted, but transformed into light, into devotion, into awakening. But mastery is not achieved overnight. The path is marked by struggle, by lapses, by confrontation with shadow. Abstinence is a discipline, a training of the psyche, a forging of strength. It requires patience and humility. There will be times when the shadow overwhelms, when repression masquerades as discipline, when energy feels more like torment than gift. These moments are not signs of failure, but of progress. For each struggle is an opportunity to grow in awareness, to deepen integration, to strengthen direction. The reward of this path is freedom, not freedom from desire. For desire will always be part of life, but freedom from enslavement by it. The person who practices abstinence with mastery does not fear desire, nor indulge it blindly. He stands in relation to it, as master to servant, guiding its power, drawing from its strength, but never losing himself in its storm. This freedom is inner mastery, the capacity to live from the center of the self, guided by vision rather than compulsion. Practical mastery, then, is not about rejecting sex or glorifying abstinence as an end in itself. It is about recognizing the deeper truth, that sexual energy is life energy, that life energy can be transformed, and that transformation leads to wholeness. Abstinence is one path to such transformation, a discipline that awakens hidden currents and directs them toward higher purpose. It is not for everyone, nor is it the only way, but for those who choose it consciously, it becomes a powerful practice of growth. To stop having sex is not to lose vitality, it is to gather vitality. It is to hold in your hands the fire of life, and to decide what you will forge with it. Will you repress it and be consumed? Will you indulge it and remain enslaved? Or will you master it, directing its power toward the creation of art, vision, love, and awakening? That is the challenge and the gift of abstinence. To stop having sex is not the end of desire, but the revelation of its deeper meaning. The energy we call libido is not bound only to the body. It is the very current of life itself. When held consciously, it does not fade, but transforms, rising from instinct into creativity, from longing into vision, from shadow into strength. Abstinence, then, is not about denial, nor about shame. It is about mastery, the ability to guide the fire rather than be consumed by it. We have seen that sublimation turns instinct into creation, that shadow work transforms repression into integration, and that practical mastery gives daily shape to this process. The path is not without struggle, for energy always resists containment, but in the crucible of abstinence, this struggle becomes the very source of transformation. The choice is always before us, to repress and be enslaved, to indulge and be drained, or to master and be transformed. The one who chooses mastery discovers that what begins as abstinence ends as awakening. For within withheld desire lies not emptiness, but the hidden power of the soul, the power to create, to love deeply, and to become whole.